Well, good morning.
Good morning.
As I was writing my the Dharma Talk, or putting together the notes for the Dharma Talk today, which is titled "The Case of the Poisoned Personality," I was thinking about maybe extending this beyond a Dharma Talk into a novel or a movie script. We'll see how it works, but we'll take it one step at a time. The case of the poisoned personality. Who's the victim of that poisoning? Well, the whole human race is the victim of the poisoning of the personality. When did it happen? A long time ago. Who did it? Well, we may never know. And even if we did catch the culprit, I'm sure the statute of limitations has been far exceeded, you see. Because human beings have been human beings for a long time. And the poison that we experience is not a poisoning of the body, but of the mind. And the poisoning of the mind is what has created what in Sanskrit is called dukkha. In English, it may be called dissatisfaction, unhappiness. The human race, for whatever reason, and for whomever is responsible, has been poisoned with a sense of chronic unhappiness. And all too often we think it's because of something we personally have not done right or have done wrong. All too often we blame the circumstances of our life. And all too often we fail to realize that what we're talking about really is the human condition. And certainly the particular flavor or style of our unhappiness may vary from person to person. But underneath, it's basically the same. It's chronic, and it's universal. The good news is that 2,500 years ago, someone awakened to the antidote for this poisoning, and in that awakening developed a system of teaching that has been passed on to us to this day, almost miraculously. And the reason I say almost miraculously is that it was not written down for 500 years, but the teachings were transmitted from one generation of monks to the next through chanting, through verbal recitation, through prayers. Virtually everyone was illiterate at that time. There were no writing implements. Everything was verbal. And so we have been given this precious jewel of the Dharma, which is the antidote to the poisoned personality. So let's see what the Buddha has told us about dukkha, about the poison. And I'll put it in my own language, not his. The poison comes in 3 flavors, 3 types, 3 forms. And these 3 flavors, I'll call them, of the poisoned personality are that of craving, aversion, and delusion. And we'll talk about each one of these separately, recognizing they're really all part of the same thing. They're all different facets of the same poison. They're really not separate, but they have different facets. I sometimes refer to them as the unholy trinity. For those of you that have been brought up in the tradition of the Holy Trinity. So let's talk about the first one, which is craving. Craving, grasping, holding. You know what it is. It's much easier to simply experience it than it is to explain it. Craving is that deep feeling, belief, sense that I've got to have something that I don't have. It's that I got to have, it's that hunger. Literally, the word tanha, the Sanskrit word tanha, means thirst. And that was the word that the Buddha used to represent craving, as thirst. There's something that we're thirsty for. There's something that we're hungry for. And even when we have what we want, there is another version of craving, and that's clinging. We want to possess it. We have this fear of losing it. So even when we get what we want, there's still suffering because there's the fear of losing it, you see. So I either want what I don't have, therefore I'm not happy, or I do have what I want, but I'm not happy because someone might take it away from me, or it might go away, which of course it will, whatever it is. You see. So craving is that it's much easier to represent it this way. It's been said, and I've heard this a number of times, that in rural India, the way they catch monkeys is that they'll take a gourd or a coconut shell, drill a hole in the top of it, and they'll put food in there. Sweetmeats and dates and nuts and things that monkeys really like. And so the monkey they'll take the gourd and they'll tie it to a tree or a post or something. And the monkey will come down, will reach in the gourd inside the coconut, grab the food, but they can't get their fist out. They get their hand in, but once it makes a fist, they can't get it out. They're stuck. And for whatever reason, they can't let go. Kind of like us in a way, in a different way. They can't let go, and so they're stuck. They're trapped. They're tethered. And in some cases, they get cooked. So we do too. We get stuck. We get cooked. And it's like, fortunately, we have the ability to relax and to let go. So let's talk about the next poison, which is aversion or resistance. Aversion, resistance, is the energy of pushing away, of wanting to get rid of, run from, destroy, or hide from something. It's the sense that something is threatening us, the sense that there's something that's unbearable. I sometimes say that aversion is craving turned inside out, because craving is this, I got to have it, and aversion is I got to get rid of it. And so sometimes craving is even used in the sense of craving to have or craving to get rid of. But it's this sense of wanting to kill the mosquito that's trying to bite you, or lashing out at somebody that criticizes you, or whatever the case might be. It's that. Or the other side of aversion is fear. Something scares us and we shrink, or we run, or we hide from it, you see. So aversion is go away. Craving is I gotta have it. And the third poison is that of delusion. And delusion itself comes in two flavors, or two stages, I should say. The first stage of delusion is called ignorance. And ignorance has nothing to do with intelligence or education. Ignorance in this context means unawareness or unconsciousness. So delusion is when we forget or we lose awareness of something. And then the second stage is delusion. Delusion is not only when we forget what's true, but we believe something that's not true. We become attached to something that's delusion is typically referred to if we see visions that aren't there. We see somebody that only we can see. Maybe they're there, but nobody else can see them. And that's called delusion, you see. So delusion is when we believe something that's not true to be true, or when we forget, or when we forget what is true, what's real. We mistaken the false for the real. So let's talk about how to apply the antidotes, the remedy to these, because that's really what the Dharma is, what the Buddha brought for us. The antidote to all of these, or I should say the antidote to craving and aversion, is first of all to be aware, to bring awareness to it, and to have equanimity in the sense that we're not buying into the craving, we're not buying into the aversion, we're just noticing it. We're not necessarily agreeing with it. So we're not condemning it, we're not judging it, we're not saying it's good, we're not saying it's bad, we're just recognizing, okay, there's craving, there's aversion. With craving, we can notice the flavor of craving and recognize that craving comes out of a delusion, often a deluded sense that there's something deficient, there's something missing, there's something inherently not okay that needs to be filled. And out of that sense of emptiness or deficiency comes this, I gotta have it. See, if we aren't thirsty, we don't have the sense of I gotta have water. But if I'm thirsty, there's the awareness that I don't have. And so we crave all sorts of things that we believe we have to have. because we believe that it's not within us. That love or that intelligence or that confidence or that success or whatever it is we want in our life is absent. And it may be absent externally, but the craving comes not out of that, but the craving comes out of the fact that we feel deficient internally. So just noticing that. And again, not doing anything with it, but noticing it, not condemning it, and not judging it. That's what's really very important. Another antidote for craving is the recognition of impermanence, that no matter what we have, no matter what we grasp, no matter what we want to hold on to, it's going to be gone. It's like grasping smoke. You know, it's like trying to hold on to an ice cube in a hot summer day. It's there for a while, but not for long. And that's the state of everything. It's like an ice cube. It's there, and then it melts away. So there's nothing we can hold on to permanently. That's the bad news. The good news is there's nothing we need to hold on to. But it feels that way. It feels like we do. Another antidote for craving is generosity, practicing generosity or dana. Because when we look at the mind state of generosity, it comes from a sense of fullness. I can give because I'm full. And that's the antidote to the belief that there's deficiency. So if you feel like you're deficient of something, give it. You know? Anytime we feel like something's missing, if we can practice giving it, that's one way to begin to prime the pump. It's still an internal shift that needs to take place, but sometimes those external actions, and even just the attitude of giving, that's really the most important thing. It's not what you give or how much you give, but just this sense of, instead of waking up in the morning saying, what can I get? Which is what the ego does. What can I get? It's like this little bird, hungry bird. Feed me, feed me, feed me, you see. But what if we woke up and said, what can I give? What can I give? You see how that flips the attitude around. So there are various antidotes for craving, as there are for aversion. Aversion is sometimes called hatred, because there's a sense of ill will in aversion. Whether it's anger or fear, there's this sense of, I hate you, go away, you know. We hate what we fear and we fear what we hate. So hatred and fear are very closely related. So anger, hatred, fear. What's the antidote for that? Opening the heart. Because aversion is a closed heart. Anytime there's aversion, if there's judgment or fear or hatred, we close our heart to someone or something else. If I can open my heart to someone else, then the fear, the hatred will go away eventually. Welcoming, metta practice, loving kindness practice, compassion practice, whatever it is, just opening our heart. You know, we really can't hate someone we know well. That's one of the things in conflict resolution and in dealing with peace agreements and so on and so forth, is that when we get to know our so-called enemy as another human being, they're no longer the enemy. You You see, the enemy is something that someone we close our heart off to. And finally, forgiveness is another one, by the way, a big one in healing aversion, being willing to forgive. And with delusion, delusion's the one we can't overcome simply by being aware of us, because that's the very nature of delusion, is the lack of awareness, you see. So when delusion shows up, and if that's the personality type that seems to be chronically deluded or unaware, concentration practice can be very helpful. Any practice that brings enthusiastic effort, as we say every Sunday morning, that brings that sense of connection with the ground of reality is very important. Because delusion sometimes is sort of, we can get lost in this fog of unawareness. You know, delusion is like when you get lost in a movie or a football game or something like that. It can be rather pleasant, and there's nothing wrong with it, seemingly, until we try to live our life that way. And then it creates a great deal of suffering. So, concentration practice, focusing on awareness of craving and aversion, focusing on the sense of self. Delusion usually is around self-forgetting. That's the first step in delusion, is when we forget our own sense of beingness. We forget, who am I? What do I want? Why am I here? What brings meaning to my life? So with delusion, that's one of the important practices, is that sense of developing a sense of self, not as an ego sense of self, but as a localized sense of awareness of, this is who I am, this is what I'm aware of, and this is what's happening. And we're running out of time, but the point is that the poisons need to be recognized. We have the antidotes, and the good news is that beyond the poisons is the Buddha mind, awaiting discovery at any given moment in our life. So thank you for practicing the Dharma. Thank you for listening this morning.